Java animation of this. I wanted to show you, just maybe to give us a little handle on this, that in terms of understanding the heart profoundly, there is a famous section of the book 2/3 by David Myers and David Percy, in which they're describing why so many crop circles were based on the shape of the hat of Osiris. Now, the hat of Osiris is famously, we now know, a drawing of the shape of the pericardium, which is the soundboard container that contains the hearts and the heart's sound. And actually,
pericardium's up in the head?
Well, in the case of Osiris, the pericardium is the cone above your head, which is directing your aura. But in biology, clearly, the pericardium is the sac of muscle containing your heart. And in today's story, we'll see why, but in the book 2/3, they say the Arcturians are the origin of the Essenes. In today's story, we're going to see that that's Akhenaten, Atun being Enki, who changed his name to Moses, the founder of the Essenes, and monotheism. So the Arcturian Essene Atun is saying to us in the book 2/3 explicitly, look, get the skill to consciously control the muscular shape of your pericardium, and then you will have the skill to steer the gravity force making of your heart as a rocket nozzle. The same physics, and it's explicitly explained in the book in great detail that you will not be a star navigator, you will not be Osiris going through stars, you will not have the direction of the cone tornado steering your aura, unless you get the skill to consciously control with your muscles the shape of your pericardium. In exactly the same way that having conscious control to control the muscles of your eyeball control if you can focus light. The fact is that you don't have the skill to focus the gravity-making power of your heart, turning it into a rocket motor to steer your aura, just like a nozzle on a jet engine. Tilting the nozzle determines whether you steer. So this is the device, the pericardium, that determines whether you have control over the gravity force made by your heart. And they're explaining biologically developing those inner muscles is the process of becoming a star navigator. And those are the people that got big salaries in those gold mining days. Yes. Yes.
You were right, I need to write that question, the answer down. I asked Dan earlier about re-explaining grace, and I need to write it now.
We suggested yesterday that the grace referred to by religion refers to the skill to move with the calculus of curvature necessary to conserve charge. In holistic architecture, they call that living curvation. So, for example, if I know the angle at which to move the capacitive field that follows life, charge, chi, grace, follows specifically because the curvature has conserved and has not had any jerks. Right? Okay. And so when you study calculus, you're actually learning grace. Yeah? In that sense. If you really understood calculus. Yes?
I would like to just acknowledge, I've noticed that we're about half and half of scientific minds and more the feeling minds or feeling of hearts that we've come together in this class. I would also like to thank, not being the scientific type, never having wanted to go there, I would like to thank the scientific minds for doing what you've done, because in your presentation yesterday, I felt a lot of it was going over my head. However, the feeling part of me wanted to cry, because I have always known this, and being a child and a teenager, having experienced those things that you're explaining, giving me the language, and then shoving it aside because you have to live in this world here.
The taste of bliss.
And at this point in my life, getting it back.
Well, thank you for thinking of us. And some of us who have had trouble feeling, thank you for bringing that feeling and softness. Like, do you mind sharing your story last night of loosening the muscles? It was a nice story.
Oh, I was just saying last night that as a boy I was trained not to cry. And it really just kind of ossified these muscles.
Like the stiff upper lip story.
So I had to go through a deep series of rolfing, and this was the most painful part. And when they finally loosened this, I could cry again.
Yeah, it was a really nice
It
story.
really just embedded in my whole musculature.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And in today's cosmic story, we're going to figure out, why did the Dragon Queen Elizabeth tell her son not to cry, which caused his upper lip to stiffen? That's the story. Good. Well, thank you. Any other thoughts that we'd like to chat just a bit before we? Yeah.
Good question. Could you do a recap again on how the mind stores information holographically?
The question was about how the mind stores information holographically. In the book Holographic Brain by Carl Pribram, he's suggesting that the optical cortex functions as a kind of hologram where each synapse firing is kind of a net of fireflies, Indra's net. And the resolution of that hologram is proportional to the density of firing. And that's where we got to the instruction, do not buy a used car from Shifty Eyes, because indeed it's been measured at MIT, a professor. He showed that if you're able to focus, it produces measurably increased synaptic firing density in the optical cortex. Where if someone has what's called a saccade, which is Shifty Eyes, that the firing density is much lower, and therefore the optical resolution of the hologram is much lower. So if you want HD TV in your mind, you need to learn how to focus, really, which is increasing the charge density and therefore the information density of the hologram. Now, the story of the lady in the mirror with a mirror and a magnifying glass in her purse making a hologram was to show that the hologram inside your head generates phase discipline, ability to exchange charge, with the hologram outside your head, matter, which is a hologram with a weight problem, and the ability to exchange information charge between the hologram inside and the hologram outside, determining if your dreams come true, is dependent upon generating the phase discipline to think in the language of light and become fractal and charge compressing inside. And the index to that phase discipline is called alphabet, if that were indeed the real alphabet of the symmetry of light. Yeah?
Dan, are you saying that if you verbalize what you want to be manifested in your life, it happens?
Well, the audio aspect is potent as well. Here we're talking about the optical hologram initially, but remember in the Steiner school, the exercise, much better this exercise would be of children who have not been addicted to TV, but if their inner muscles are still available to create an image inside, which TV can destroy in young children, unfortunately, but the ability to have the inner muscle to make an accurate picture of a rose inside your head, the Steiner children are taught to do that in a group until you can very clearly smell roses in the room. And they start by making a series of drawings and get more and more clear. And then they're taught to make the rose open and the perfume fills the room. And then they all visualize together the rose closing and you can feel the room wilting. So they're making an electric field potently by the phase discipline of that hologram. Whether it's word or thought, it's a sonic hologram or an optical, the principles would be the same. So the issue was how they do that was they're gradually taught to make an increasingly clear series of hand drawings of the stages of a rose opening until those phase discipline symmetry paths are clear enough in their optical mentation that the inner muscles can build that hologram with such resolution the symbol becomes the object. So the hologram inside your head is normally of lower charge density. But if you do the homework the hologram inside your head becomes higher resolution and has phase discipline, and then your dreams come true, because you phase lock mass.
Is that affected also by the sixth eye instead of just the optical influence to create the hologram?
The notion from Bentoff's work on the biophysics, perhaps, of Kundalini was that the phonon wave geometry that's massaged by the EKG and phase locked in the ventricle horns is focused on the pineal pituitary complex. And the pineal gland migrates from crystal toward liquid, soften the hearts of the hardened sinners. It is softened by the phonon. At the same time, the liquids of the brain are now being columnated more toward crystal. And at a certain point, the phase propagation velocities equalize from liquid to crystal and crystal to liquid, and the cavity goes critical, a kind of sonic description of bliss focused on the pineal. And then the ductless glands secrete a hormone which, like not just melatonin and serotonin, but the pinealine, for example, which radically affects the conductivity threshold of the synapse. So the brain liquids can literally become a superconductor. So saying that the pineal is a residual of the tissue of the retina is just the beginning. The pineal is, in that sense, the steering wheel for the part of the glandular aura that's going through the speed of light. The downside of that is that Dracos who couldn't make their own bliss juice would eat live human pineal glands, creating a black market across the stars. And they would have a near-death experience and become the age of the persons whose gland they ate. It's the famous sad story of the fallen Dracs. That's the power.
Therefore, the dark crystal was right. They were eating guiltlings.
They were eaten.
Guiltlings. Guiltlings.
Yeah. And this was called the Black Ritual. It's talked about even in